Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 107. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Friday. Dave, day one of the 2021 NFL Draft is in the books, and the Steelers pick is running back Najee Harris out of Alabama.
Yep, and probably the first 3 or 4 or 5 picks, I think, were probably non-surprising to a lot of people when it comes to the draft. And you go all the way down to 24. Has there ever? I was trying to think back, and I just can't find an instance in my mind where there was such a straight line from, say, February to draft day, where there's just been this mass belief, speculation, prognostication that a certain player would be the Steelers draft pick. And I mean, it was scary how kind of all the signs were pointing that way, that he could potentially be the pick. Now, yeah, you could go back to a couple of years ago with Devin Bush, but I mean, let's face it, a lot of people probably considered Devin Bush to be a top 10 pick, which he was. The Steelers would have to go up and get him, and who the hell predicts a trade? When it comes to the Steelers and all. So, the only one I could come up with in my head is maybe Cameron Hayward back in 2011, where you got a guy bottom of the first round, bottom third of the first round, where there were a lot of signs, but even then, I don't think it was that overwhelming of a thought way back then that this guy is probably going to be the Steelers pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that we had talked about this process feeling like it was too clean, too obvious, too on the nose. And to be honest, the Steelers board had a ton of options when it came to time to make their pick at number 24. They could have gone in a couple different directions and still gotten a good player. The board broke, I think, unbelievably well for them. But Harris was their guy. We knew that. That was no surprise. There wasn't the discussion about what if Harris isn't there. The concerns were, could Arizona, could Miami, could the Jets poach Harris from Pittsburgh? That obviously did not happen. And so the Steelers get their featured runner, which is what they've wanted for the longest time now, I'm sure.
Yeah, look, Art Rooney II speaks.
Yeah. Tomlin said it. Mr. Rooney is the boss.
He speaks, and now look, I mean, you could obviously fix the running game, could go in a couple of different directions there, but one of those directions usually revolves around the guy running the football, right? I thought there was a decent chance that Najee would go off the board there, especially when you got to the starting with the Arizona Cardinals, but I mean, things broke absolutely perfect, really. I mean, if the Steelers' intention all along was to get Najee Harris, but at the same time have 4 or 5 other players probably that you could have probably seen them take, that first round broke perfect for them, really. And once you got past, once you saw the Jets do what they did and trade up, and then once Miami, once you got past that number 18 spot, I mean, it kind of felt academic at that point. The only question is at that point you're thinking is, do they have another player maybe that has fallen that they had ranked higher on the board than Najee Harris? And by all appearances, the answer to that question was no. And by all appearances, they had Najee circled the whole time to be at 24 if he was there.
It sure seems like it. Yeah, I got nervous really only twice in terms of the Najee Harris sweepstakes. Maybe this was some paranoia. When the Jets traded up to 14 and they jumped the Cardinals, who are rumored to want Najee Harris or have him on their short list. I thought, could the Jets be making a big swing here? I know that's a big jump to 14. They took Barrett Tucker, the tackle guard from USC, and then at pick 18, who would be the Dolphins pick? They go Jalen Phillips, a pass rusher out of the U. And so, as you said, once the Dolphins pick came and went, and Harris was still there and the Jets had moved up, they were out of the running. You really had a clear path for Harris. The question was, could a team trade up and try to jump Pittsburgh? Obviously, no one did, and Harris was a Steelers guy.
You know, there's a report out there this morning from Jason Locken for Dolphins were trying like heck to get ahead of the Steelers at 24 to grab Najee after passing on him at 18 and then moving up or down, blah, blah, blah. Jason Locken was one of the ones out there that's thinking, you know, Najee wasn't going to make it to the Steelers, and even if he did, you know, question if the Steelers would even take a running back at that spot. So to me, that it sure does smell like that report's more like you know, just covering the tracks there, and you know because he was off the mark on what he prognosticated there and all, but you know, once again, I think going all the way back to the Senior Bowl and, you know, the first report from, you know, one of our early reports, I think Tony Pauline and all saying, you know, the Steelers have heavy interest. And look, you know, even reading into those reports way back then, because teams reportedly meet with everybody, you know, but you know, to hear Najee talk during the pre-draft process, about, you know, there's that one specific, you know, during the pro day there talking about how, you know, really had, you know, the Zoom meeting with the Steelers was the coolest one, you know, chillest one, I think, of the bunch there. And obviously the super large contingent the Steelers sent to both of the Alabama pro days. You know, it was easy to start drawing the straight line, like I said, dating all the way back to the Senior Bowl there. So this will have to go down in the annals of one of the. It's going to be hard to top this one, because I put on Twitter a few weeks ago, I think, man, I'm not sure the Steelers could have any more fingerprints on Najee Harris than they did through the pre-draft process, and it ended up being they got more than their fingerprints on them.
Yeah, they have him now. Yeah, the only way it could be more obvious is if Kevin Colbert wears a T-shirt to the next year's pre-draft press conference with "This is our draft pick. This is our draft board." It's not going to get more obvious than that. But the Steelers get their guy, and we can debate about the value of the running back position, and I think that's all good and well and fair and understandable. But the Steelers team is better today than it was this time yesterday, where they have their lead back, and they hopefully can improve a run game that certainly needs to be upgraded. And yes, they will address the offensive line as well. It was not either or. It was not running back or offensive line. It was simply the order in which you would take it. And so I think today can be considered offensive lineman day for the Pittsburgh Steelers when they get on the clock here.
Yeah, look, you know how I feel about running backs in the first round and the fungibility of the position. I'm not a haven't been a fan of teams doing that in quite a while. However, Conlon, like I said throughout this process, if you are going to do it, if you're going to draft a running back in the first round, you better get one that can stay on the field all 3 downs. You better get one that can catch the ball out of the backfield. You better get one that can pass protect, and you better get one that can stay healthy. You know, and that's obviously Najee enters the NFL having being that back, that 3-down back, and be able to catch the football out of the backfield, and you be able to do a lot. Pass protects well on top of it. I mean, he's easily been, from the first time you turn on the film, he's been running back 1, I think, overall. And now the question is how much will that fungibility of the pick come in play here? Look, he wasn't going to last to the Steelers to 55, right? I think everybody can agree on that. I think the best way to judge this pick on Najee Harris will play into what happens probably in round 2, to be quite honest with you. a lot of us thought that the team in some order would go running back, offensive line, running back in the first 2 rounds to properly address their running game. The Steelers have gone running back in the first round, and they got the consensus number 1 running back in the NFL. I guess it depends on who you ask, but I'm guessing 3 out of 4 people would have had Najee ranked running back 1 there. So now the question becomes, and this is what's been giving me the heartburn the most here, is you gotta get a center here, Alex. You gotta get a center here. I don't know if you saw the tweet I posted yesterday. You know, and we've talked about this. You have 2 centers under contract right now on your roster for 2021, and B.J. Finney and J.C. Hassenauer. Combined, those 2 have a little over 500 NFL snaps at the center position. J.C. Hassenauer is not anything more than what he was this past season for the Steelers. In fact, I mean, he's more of a practice squad player, I think, than he is anything else. He's another one of those players that's probably a better guard than he is a center. B.J. Finney, bless his heart, he can play center. He played center in college, but to me, his best position in the NFL has been left guard. You just cannot go into the NFL season this year expecting those 2 guys to be your center. And you've got to come out of today, and really I think specifically the second round at 55 overall, with a starting center. We'll see what Landon Dickerson's medicals say. I think he's 1A, and then Creed Humphrey, I think, is 1B. If you can come out of today with one of those 2 guys, and maybe a fallback of a Quinn Miners, then I think that makes the selection of Najee Harris in the first round, 24 overall, look all that much better.
The good news is they're all there. No centers were taken in round 1.
And how many times we talked about the center position for some reason gets pushed down, Yeah. If there was a reason to think that it wouldn't have this year, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that there was a reason to think that it wouldn't have this year, but we're still 20-something picks away from the Steelers' pick. So if neither one of those 2 fall to the Steelers, I'm a huge Quinn Miners fan, but let's face it, he has not played center in the NFL. Okay, and then after him, you got Myers out of Ohio State, kind of consolation prize, if you will here. So I think the big thing to watch for, Alex, and I think it's a captain obvious right now, is can they come out of the 55th overall pick in this draft with one of either Landon Dickerson or Creed Humphrey?
Yeah, here's the thing with center, and I mean, not to pat myself on the back too hard here, but we outlined this, several times in the pre-draft process. Centers typically fall, but when they go, they start. There's that run in that early mid-second round, basically 35 to 50 basically is where you'll start to see a run at center, because the value starts to become too good for teams to pass up on, as you've taken already 7 offensive tackles or whatever the number is going to be by that time. So I think there's a good chance that both Humphrey and Dickerson, pending medical, are gone by 55. If either are there, they're very, very tempting. But if both are gone, then you go back to the next 2, which would be Quinn Miners and Josh Myers. Now also, this surprised me, and who knows if this is smokescreen or bad information or what, but Jared Dulac tweeted out a list of players to watch on day 2, so that could be rounds 2 or 3, included Drew Dalman, the center from Stanford, who's kind of regarded as a day 3 kind of guy. Does not have great size, I don't believe, at least overall, but he has good pedigree and good bloodlines. His dad played and coached in the NFL, so that's, I guess, one other center name to at least mention as well.
Well, Robert Hainsey too. I mean, if you miss on all, but once again, you're into a projection. I mean, if you've got questions about Landon Dickerson, all right, and let's say for some reason he falls, okay, to 55, and we don't know what the medicals are. Heck, he might fall in the 4th or 5th round for all we know right now. Because of the medicals. But if the medicals are there, and you just took a chance that if it was just one of those, man, we just can't risk the 1st round pick on it, or we deemed the running backs the better value there. We weren't going to get a guy like Najee in the 2nd round, yada yada, for whatever reason. Let's say they end up with Landon Dickerson at 55.
Mm-hmm.
You could at later on in the draft with I don't know where is Hainsey most likely to go. He's not going to be a tackle in the NFL level. I think we can agree to that. I mean, you could put him some snaps out there, push come to shove in case of emergency. But he's more of a guard center, and I think at Senior Bowl, there was, like as there was with Quinn Miners, there was enough evidence to think that he could make the transition to center at the NFL level. I guess what I'm getting at is if you went the route with Dickerson at 55, maybe you consider seriously in one of those 4th round picks, because it would probably take one of those 4th round picks to do it. Going ahead and getting a guy like Hainsey, and boy, you sure did sew up your offensive line in a hurry. But then on top of it, when are you going to get the tackle that you need too?
Yeah, but I think just to look at a bigger picture, the reason why they took running back at 24 and on the surface, it seems like a less valued position and a reach from that standpoint, because this offensive line class is so deep, because the tackle class is so good. And I think overall the interior class, while not quite as deep as tackle, has a lot of really strong day 2 value at least. And so for Pittsburgh, again, I said this many times, and I think it came true last night, was Steelers' calculation was, let's get the running back in the 1st round because it'll be easier to find the offensive line help on day 2 than vice versa, where the O-line guy comes at 24 and now you have to try to find your feature back in round 2, which basically would have been a list of probably Trey Sermon or bust. Really narrows that down, and Sermon has his own concerns as well, although I do like his game. But I think that was the calculation, and so that's the reason why I think primarily they wanted to get that running back at 24, because they were not going to find that 3-down feature guy like Harris is beyond pick number 24.
Well, the way I look at it is if you would have went offensive line, say Dickerson or and I'm talking about look, I mean we all think that they're going to get a tackle in this draft, but to me I think center ranks way higher than tackle right now. So had you got a center in round 1, let's say Dickerson or Humphrey, you would have probably put yourself in a 1-in-1 chance when it comes to getting a running back that you could consider a 3-down running back in round 2 at 55 overall. That guy being Trey Sermon.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, is anybody thinking that Javante's not going to go off the board before 55?
My expectation is that he will be off the board before 55.
Right, I think so as too. So you give yourself a one-off shot there to get the running back in at 55 overall. Whereas right now where things stand right now, it's easy to look at this thing right now when you got 32 picks in the book. Is you have and once again we don't know what the medicals are on Landon Dickerson. If they're awful, then he's just off the board altogether. But let's assume the medicals are fine. You have a 1-2 shot at Dickerson Humphrey, right? And also we've seen center for whatever reason get pushed down here. So and tackle seemingly kind of got pushed down a little bit in this thing so far. I don't think as many tackles went off the board as what a lot of people maybe speculated as well too. And who knows how that's going to play out into round 3 and round 4. So once again, I think this goes back to, man, if this team comes out of 55 with a guy like Dickerson or Humphrey, who are 1, 2 in whatever order you want to put them in when it comes to the center, then then it makes that spending that first round pick on Najee that much better, because really, who else were you going to spend a first round draft pick on if it wasn't one of the top 3 running backs, or if it wasn't one of the top 2 centers? Correct? I mean, yeah. I mean, you could draw the list. Darisaw, Telvin Jenkins. I mean,
JOK if you want to.
JOK, but I mean, let's think about logistic. Art Rooney said, "Go this way." Our hands are already tied behind our back. We've got to address, one of these 2 positions. So if you look at it in a vacuum that way, that look, defense wasn't going to happen. Period. If you look at it at like, tackle, quarterback wasn't going to happen. Period. Well, then you're down to really a list of like 5 or 6 names, I think.
Yeah, to me, in terms of the offensive guys, in terms of the guys that, with the mantra, the Rooney mandate of, have a better run game, be more physical, is probably Harris versus, I would say, probably Dickerson or Tevin Jenkins, even though Jenkins would have been a surprise from the historic pro day aspect of things. Jenkins ended up not getting drafted in the first round, which I did not see coming at all.
Isn't there a little bit of talk about Jenkins maybe having to, at some point, to go inside the guard? I mean, I know it's not widespread, but there are some instances on tape where you see him get beat to the edge, man. I mean, he is a mauler. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that guy, especially in 2020. But I think I brought this up at some point during the pre-draft process when I was talking about him. I get it with him. And once again, though, he is a specific right tackle. Now, not in today's NFL. You have to have a good left tackle. You have to have a good right tackle. But teams, for some reason, still value left tackle types more than right tackle types. Like it or not, there is a bias to side there.
Financially, primarily, I think these days.
Yeah, I think probably side, when it comes to first round as well too, and all, and I think that and the fact that there has been some kind of rumblings about him having to potentially kick inside. I got to be honest with you, I never really gave hard, serious consideration to Tevin Jenkins being the pick because of a lot of the Blues Clues things, because he's right tackle, yada, yada. So, once again, I think circling back to, is we had the Rooney mandate of fixing the offensive line. Odds were probably great. Because of that, I think you could throw every defensive player out of the club.
Especially once Collins went off the board.
Right.
To some degree, perhaps.
Right, and then I think it was kind of, I think you're whittling yourself down to 2 centers and 3 running backs. Five players that I think could be in play, and then one of those 5 players, Landon Dickerson, you have no unearthly idea what's going on with what the team thinks about with his medicals there. So now let's see if they can come out of round 2 with player number 2 of those 5 players.
Right.
If they do, then once again, I think it makes that first round selection of Najee Harris look that much better. If you don't, then you're looking at a Myers out of Ohio State. I mean, I'm not buying the center positions deep this year. I'm not buying that.
I think it's 4 deep. I think we can just be specific about it and say it's Humphrey, Dickerson, Miners, and Myers. And I think there's a drop-off after that.
Right, and you got a question mark on Dickerson. I would add Robert Hainsey to that as a ripcord,
Right. Yeah, as your parachute. But to the pick itself at 24, because as you said earlier, the board broke, I think, unbelievably well overall for the Steelers. A lot of people asking, should the Steelers try to trade down, acquire more picks? Kevin Cooper was asked that during his press conference after the pick. He said, quote, no, when asked if there was any desire to trade down. He went on to say, quote, this year we identified 8 players that if they were available, we would take them and not consider a trade. And Najee was one of those players, ecstatic that he was there for us at 24. So Steelers, sounds like, and they turned that pick in really quick. I know it took a couple minutes to announce it, but basically as soon as was at Minnesota at 23, made the pick on Darisaw. about 2 minutes later, you saw the Pickett graphic come up for Pittsburgh. So they knew Harris was their guy, and they probably barely even talked to anyone about a trade possibility.
They never play games with that anyway, do they? I mean, they usually it usually pops up pretty quick. The pick is.
If only the rest of the league would do that, we wouldn't be up until 4 a.m.
Well, look, advertisers make the world go around, Alex. So I have become, that's it. They got to make their money. So, is it crazy? You're ready for the draft to get underway. A team's basically specifically told to use up all the time on the clock, yada, yada. I get it. Look at this. I mean, it's a money-making thing. So, I get over that aspect of it pretty quick. All right.
But shout out to Steelers. If they had it their way, there would be no draft. You would get a letter in the mail 3 weeks later. Najee Harris, you're the pick. See you at camp. Just very old school like that.
There you go. Who do you? If you had, not that it matters at this point, but who were the other 7 players? If you had to guess.
Yeah, I wish not that Colbert would have ever tell who the players were. I wanted someone to ask, were any of those other 8 players still on the board when you were picking at 24? I suspect 1 or 2 of them at least were. I don't know. We could sit here all day and try to guess those names. We can mention Zaven Collins. We could mention Tevin Jenkins. We could mention, I think Alex Leatherwood may have been in play. Dickerson perhaps. Maybe a couple of the running backs, Williams, maybe ETN, but we're just guessing.
Yeah, I'm not asking him to name the name specifically, but it'd be nice to know how many of those 7 were on the board.
Right, because he's never going to name names, but he might tell you the number. He probably wouldn't still, but he might.
I would think of the ones still on the board. I would think Travis Etienne was probably one of them.
The very next pick.
Yeah, boy, you want to talk about a strange man? You go. Go from franchise quarterback to, you have the poster boy of the fungibility Bible there at running back for you there, and then you turn around and you take a running back in the first round when you could use 18 other different positions there, and then you're going to turn around and call, we got a 3rd round back in Travis Etienne. I mean, people want to get on it, and look, I mean, I understand from the fungibility and value and running back factor and all like that, how some of these people will, the Warren Sharps and look, even me, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of taking a running back in the first round, but if you're going to do it, you better get one that can be on the field all 3 downs. And you better really essentially get the top one in the draft, which the Steelers, I feel the Steelers did. For Jacksonville to turn around and do that when they have the kid, what's his name, Robinson?
James Robinson.
James Robinson, who did once again the poster child for fungibility. Just that didn't make a lot of sense at all. So I would imagine Jaguars are going to get crucified pretty good for that second pick.
But if you had checked out my 7-round mock draft, I didn't have the pick exactly right, but at pick 33, I had this Jaguars taking Travis Etienne. So
all right, I mean,
for that one.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a new regime, and Balky, the GM, loves having multiple running backs, so that was the reason there. But anyway,
boy, when you look at the Jets and Dolphins running back rooms, it makes you really wonder. That they are going to be good test scenarios to the fungibility factor, right? Because both of them, you could have made strong arguments for them for both of them to adjust the running back position, having multiple picks in the first round. So, and I think the other parallel, much almost like it was back in when the Steelers drafted Le'Veon Bell several years ago. I think you're going to have Le'Veon, like as Le'Veon Bell was tied to Eddie Lacy, I think you're going to have Najee tied to Travis Etienne, at least at the start of the careers here.
Yeah, but let's talk about Harris a little bit more, the player. I know we've discussed him so much in the pre-draft process, so a lot of this is probably us just repeating ourselves, but the Steelers have gotten a 3-down feature back, and I think Dave, he is such a perfect fit in the Steelers offense, putting value and positional value aside for a moment here. They needed a position, and I think he is, to me, a spitting image of Le'Veon Bell, and obviously they hit on Le'Veon Bell. They didn't want to lose Le'Veon Bell. He ended up leaving because of the financial negotiations and all that stuff, but I think they get, hopefully, their next Love Bell with that pick.
Yeah, and it goes back to, once again, a guy that you can keep on the field for all 3 downs. And we will get more specific with our breakdowns, with our film room sessions, moving on from the draft. That's one of the most exciting things I think that we have coming here after the draft, is that we're going to really go niche specific, and as an example of that, look, I have already, and is one of the first contextualizations I did this offseason here, was to do a contextualization of his explosive runs, and by explosive runs, 10 yards or longer. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see some niche-like film rooms from us on Najee, one dedicated all to pass protection, which he's good at. Another one dedicated to catching the football out of the backfield. Another one making. There's an old Air Supply song, "Making Love Out of Nothing at All." Well, someone's gonna attack one, making yards out of nothing at all. You're not a big Air Supply fan, are you?
Shockingly, no.
Okay. But anyway, getting it specific like that, and Najee has shown all those elements that I just talked about there. The biggest thing that sticks out about Najee's game statistically is that he is Le'Veon Bell, and the fact that he's probably not going to run away from a lot of people in the NFL level. And, that was one of the knocks, especially coming out of college for Le'Veon Bell and into the pros was, man, where are those explosive runs at? And, I think that's one of the first graphics that I put up during the pre-draft process when I started diving down into the running backs here is, not a great 20-yard explosive run rate. However, a very, very nice, robust 10-yard rate. So if you want to get into slicing up the atom here, and it's been a topic of conversation for years now, is what is an explosive running play in the NFL? Is it 10 yards? Is it 15 yards? Is it 20 yards? I think obviously when it comes to throwing the football and down the field to receivers, I mean, you're never ever going to get anybody away from the 20-yard explosive run number there. Is there enough there to say that 10 yards for a run by a running back is more than qualified to count as an explosive run? Is it stealing when a running back gets 10 yards on the ground? So very nice percentage, one of the better percentages in college football when it comes to 10-yard runs or more for Najee Harris. So there is that gap, though, between the 10 and the 20-yard runs.
Mm-hmm. There is, yeah. We know that, had Harris, what do you think Harris would have run had he run? I'm guessing a 4.58, 4.57.
If you hear I don't know how the PFF guys they are really biased against the whole, running back first round, and I think they had Najee, their 60 whatever, third player on their big board overall in this draft. I don't know what they're going over. But I think they speculated him as a 4.6 guy.
Yeah, somewhere around there, 4.6 or low or high, I should say, 4.5s. So yeah, the long speed is not fantastic. I mean, but you knew that. That's not a surprise to anyone who's watched Harris a little bit or heard us talk or probably watch any sort of pre-draft coverage, but he's got great quickness. I think that's the thing that's so interesting with him is for a big guy, he just does not move like a big guy in the sense of he's got great lateral agility, great jump cuts, ability to win in small spaces, and as a receiver, body control, making tough catches. Just a lot of things you don't see from a lot of running backs in general, especially ones of his, pretty big size.
There is one clip specifically in that group of 47 that I contextualized, and I tweeted this out during the process as well too, of him getting bottled up inside. I think was it against Auburn? I can't remember. Getting bottled up inside, having nothing to work with, and then winning out to the edge for. It was. I don't think it was a 20-yard gain, but I think it was something like it was obviously more than 10 yards. Those are when we remember us talking about getting into breaking down running backs and during the pre-draft process and any running back. I mean, how many running backs across college football can run through some of these holes that we see get opened up, and yet their stats look all like that. And we talked about the biggest thing is basically running backs that can make something out of nothing. Those are the ones, if you dive deeper into the tape and try to find that stuff, I think that's really where you separate the men from the boys. Now, obviously, when you're looking at those that deserve to be drafted in the first couple of rounds of the draft, you're probably going to want one, the higher up they go, one that can stay on the field all three downs, one that can catch the ball out of the backfield, one that can pass protect and all like that. But going back to that one clip, that one clip is really what impressed me the most about a guy like Najee Harris and helps make up for the fact a little bit that he doesn't have the 20-yard explosive run percentage there, if that makes sense. I mean, for him to be able to turn that run against an SEC defense in from nothing into I forget, 10, 12, 13-yard run. That's the kind of runs that I think people need to be looking for when they break down tape at the running back position during the pre-draft process.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know that obviously he had the heavy benefit of running behind the best offensive line in football and already had one of their Bama guys drafted last night, and Alex Leatherwood. Probably going to see some more throughout the rest of the draft with Dickerson and Deontay Brown. But he still created. I posted clips of him against Michigan, I believe it was, in that 4-minute offense of him just tough runs, just getting yards after contact. And so, yes, he had some pretty big, runways in space at Alabama, but there's enough tape that showed, A, he could create behind the line of scrimmage, or, B, create downfield, 5+ yards with power, with, quickness, with hurdling ability even occasionally. Against Notre Dame's a great example of that. So, I think he is someone that can create and pave his own way. And that, to me, is, I think, the most important trait to have for a running back, or at least one of the most important traits.
Boy, he better not. Them short yards woes better have gone away.
I hope so. At least this was a big step in doing that. I don't know if this alone solves it, but I think it's a big first step.
I'm trying to get you the short yardage from 1 to 3 yards at Alabama here. Now, obviously, Alabama's had some great offensive lines, especially the last couple years there. Looks like 33 of 48.
That's going to be 68.8%, and the Steelers sat about 50% last year.
Okay. What do we know right off the top of my head what the NFL average was in right?
It was around 70 to 75, top of my head.
But that's league wide. That's not just running back, right?
But that'd be league wide. Yeah, I don't think that discounted a quarterback sneak or something like that.
Yeah, I wonder what the league wide average was for. I mean, that'll obviously be part of the study. I'll probably work on that aspect of it there. Passing game with him, what has stuck out?
Again, just how unusual it is for a guy, for any running back, but especially one of his size, to be able to make receiver-like catches. I posted the clip of the back shoulder fade against LSU, the body control, the hands, the finish, the touchdown. He's got 80 catches over the last 2 years, and it was hard to probably find catches when you're playing with all these first-round picks and Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and 2 more Bama guys drafted last night, Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. So he had 80 catches, and they're not just checkdowns. I mean, they were design routes. And so with Harris, whatever Matt Canada's offense is going to look like, and we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but whatever he wants to do, Harris will be able to do. He can split out. He can run a receiver route tree. He can make catches. You can use him in the screen game. The screen game's been so bad so many years. And that's partially on the offensive line, but hopefully Harris can improve that as well. So as a receiver, I think he's very advanced.
You see some of the clips. Did a good job. Some contested catches in the SEC down the field, more than 5 yards down the field too. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing that stuck out on the tape with him. Once again, not a guy going to be a huge explosive play guy. I don't think even now the backfield, looking at 2020, he had 7 of his 43 receptions. 7 of his 43 receptions gained 15 or more yards in 2020. 8 of 20, a little bit better percentage. 8 of 27 gained 15 or more in 2019.
Right. Yeah, again, there are obviously checkdowns in there. He didn't have to be used a ton downfield because they had so many weapons, but you watch the tape and look at those plays, you see some really difficult catches. The other thing that I like about Harris that I haven't talked about much, it was in my scouting report, though, the ball security. Number one thing for a running back, ball security. We don't care how good you are. If you're fumbling the football, you're going to be on the bench. And his fumble rate, I think 2, maybe 3 career fumbles at Alabama. And according to the one Alabama blog I'm looking at right now, the best fumble rate of really any running back in the Nick Saban era in terms of Alabama running backs. Better than Derrick Henry, better than T.J. Yeldon, Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram, better than Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, all those guys. And so ball security, very important. Number one, the priority. And Harris takes care of the football as well as probably any back in this draft.
Right.
So I think you have the complete package with him. You have a 3-down guy, and you have a guy that's going to make this run game better, this offense better, and by extension, this team better, because they desperately need a run game to help Ben out. And so that is the mission, and we'll see how they address offensive line in round number 2.
Once again, I think, dear 8-pound baby Jesus, please let the Steelers come out of the at 55 overall with a one of a couple centers here. Is it, if they don't get a center or a tackle in the second round, will they have done enough in this draft to properly fix the running game?
Well, I mean, we'll see what the whole draft
looks like. It all feels like tied together, right?
Sure. I mean, I think that is the plan, at least, to get running back early, and then because of the depth, we'll take offensive line on day 2. And I expect they're going to come away with somebody. May it be their ideal pick, maybe not. Maybe it will be my ideal pick. We'll see. But I think they will come away with somebody. The point is, though, they've made a lot of changes to the run game, and we'll see how much better things get. But they've made about every change possible with new offensive line coach, new assistant offensive line coach, new OC. You'll have Dotson in the lineup full-time, Barron in the lineup full-time. Pouncey's gone, Villanueva's gone. I mean, there is not a lot of the same in terms of the pieces in the run game from last year compared to this year. Now, does that guarantee you're better? No. I would argue it's tough to be worse than they were last year. It's almost impossible to do so, but there have been about as many changes possible, and I think we're going to see more of those changes and more new faces added today and potentially tomorrow on day 3 as well.
Well, here's the hoping. They address that line today. Like I said, once again, I think when you look back, and grade this thing in its totality, man, I think a lot of hinges on 55 today.
Sure, but totality is the right word for the people griping about running back as a bad pick at 24. Let's look at the big picture. Let's at least look at what happens by the end of Friday and see what offensive lineman they get and how that stacks up to the big picture of things.
When you look at using fantasy football, for example, and you look at positional value and all like that. I mean, they got the top, once again, 3 out of 4 people probably tell you Najee Harris is the top running back in this year's draft class. So positionally, value wise, I mean, you landed the top running back in a draft. Now, if you follow that up by getting one of the top 2 centers in the draft, I mean, and the mandate. And your hands are already tied behind your back. In other words, saying, look, you better fix that running game. So you're throwing out, all these other positions. I think that's the way you got to look at it, because it's not like, whatever Kevin Colbert's going to tell you, best player on the board, player we want, yada, 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 yada. A lot of times it looks more need than it does want, right?
Sure. It's never a position. It's always a position they need. I've always had the saying of it's where need and value intersect at its highest point. I think that's the case for Najee Harris. You got the best player at his position at one of your arguably top 2 needs. And to me, that's always a good way to have that value intersect need. One
other aspect that we didn't get to before we move on here, when we talk about Najee Harris, the player, the draft pick and all, on paper, impeccable character. The old hearts and smarts thing. Very, very active out there in the Bay Area in California. Spent time in a homeless shelter when he was, I think, 12 or so. Just yesterday alone, spent a good portion of draft day afternoon at that actual shelter that he spent time with, giving back to those people there. There's a 3-part series on Najee done by AL.com that I put up on the site today. 3 different videos there, YouTube series. Get a good look at him. Have heard countless interviews with him throughout the pre-draft process. There was the whole, which was a kind of a big story at the time during that first Alabama Pro Day that Najee did not participate in because of the ankle and all. The flight got canceled. Made sure that he rented a car and drove all the way back, to get to Alabama in time, because he wanted to support his teammates, both the draft hopefuls and the underclassmen, and all like that. And that evidently made an impression on the Steelers there. And that was kind of a big story. I think Adam Schefter was the original one. I think that broke that one there. Just seems to be the kind of Steelers player you would expect him to be. Very, very active in the Pittsburgh community there, and Steelers obviously like that, and there's no signs of that. I don't know, kind of questionable character here, kind of guy. Now he very well might end up being another one of those social media guys, but who is it nowadays, he checks the boxes off the field, I guess, more than anything is what I'm trying to say there.
He does. That's a great point, Dave. He's a personality for sure. He's got a really big personality, but I think it's awesome, and I think he is a really good guy through and through. I've watched those series, that 3-part series on him, and he grew up a tough childhood, kind of a wild child. He admitted growing up, getting into fights and stuff like that, but football was that safe haven for him. It was a place to have that controlled aggression and anger, and that kind of really, I think, changed his life. And so, obviously, I think from a character standpoint, there really aren't any sort of red flags with him, but he's a big personality, so I think that's going to fit in well with Pittsburgh.
Right, and as far as the durability factor goes, I mean, seems to be at least over 600. When you look back and I pulled this list this past week, there's not many dating back the last 15 years. I think I went back to 2000, or was it 2000? I forget how far I went back, but the number of running backs that exited college with more than, I think, 600 carries and more than 800 receptions that were ultimately first round draft picks. There's not a long list of those. D'Angelo Williams was on that list, though. I mean, there are notable names where you go, hey, okay, and once again, this is the 3rd oldest first-round draft pick ever that the Steelers have had. The oldest offensive draft pick the Steelers have ever had. under Kevin Colbert dating back to 2000. So that's significant there. First Alabama player drafted by the Steelers in the first round since about 1951.
I forget the date. It's been a long, long time.
Right. So that's pretty significant there too. First running back obviously taken in the first round by the Steelers since Rashard Mendenhall back in 2008. So that's pretty significant too. So here's to getting at least a good 4 solid years out of him, right?
Yeah. Again, I do not have the vision. I'm not so naive to believe he's going to be playing in 2031, 10 years from now. I don't believe that to be the case, but he's going to help you win, hopefully, for these next 4 to 5 seasons. And so, yeah, the age to me is just a number. It doesn't matter too much. And what is that? The now, third first-round pick since, 90? It was Tim Worley, I believe, and then Mendenhall and Harris have been, I think, the last 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, not a lot, right?
And hopefully he has a better career than Tim Worley or Rashard Mendenhall, but I think he will. I think they got a good pick overall. So bottom line is they got a really good player, the best player in the draft at his position, at a position of need. How can you be upset about that to me?
Well, once again, I think it goes. I think it'll be holding the hand with the with the second. With what they do at 55. All right. Anything else left? I mean, we're going to be talking about Najee Harris for the next 8 weeks consistently on the podcast. So a lot of people listening to this probably already know quite a bit about Najee Harris anyway. At least they should. If you what was the what was the thing you had in one of those mock drafts about the if somebody came across. What was that? That cracked me up. You might owe me a coffee. I mean, you might owe me a cup of coffee, and a computer screen because I spit it everywhere when I read that. What was it?
Yeah, I made the dumb joke of, it was such an obvious pick. Everyone knows that Harris is on the radar, that, researchers could go to some tribe in the Amazon. The first question the newfound people would ask was, hey, the Steelers get Najee Harris at 24? Was he going to see the pick? I mean, it was just obvious. And I know you said it was too clean, and it certainly
it was too clean. It felt me.
I had that thought in my head during the draft of you just saying it's too clean, and it was. But the Steelers, they don't do smoke screens. They're bad at poker. They get who they like, and they don't really try to hide that too much, I don't think.
Yeah, look, I thought it was too clean. I thought it was too obvious.
Yeah, but he is the pick, and so Najee Harris, the newest Pittsburgh Steeler, and we've got a couple more here on Friday night with picks 55 and 87. Dave, I want to talk more about day 2 of the NFL draft. I know we've touched on already quite a bit, some options. But before we do that, really probably the most surprising news of yesterday was not the Steelers taking Najee Harris. We knew he was the guy. The most surprising news was the Steelers announced a 1-year extension with quarterback Mason Rudolph. And I did not see that coming at all. I know we've had discussions about, did we think Rudolph would get an extension? We both thought no, because he would bet on himself and use leverage for being a free agent, and the Steelers having all their quarterbacks contract expire. But Rudolph now locked up through 2022, and I'm actually fine with the move.
Yeah, I am as well, too, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I think I wrote that I didn't think it was going to happen. I think I've said on the podcast that I didn't think it was going to happen. Now, we don't know. We've just got bits and pieces right now as far as the financials go here on it. You kind of reserve judgment a little bit until you get more of those financials on it. I think, just based on what I'm seeing initially here, I think he kind of undersold himself a little bit, to be quite honest with you. Once again, Ian Rappaport's reporting that it's a 1-year, $5 million extension, a deal that also includes up to $4 million additional in incentives. You would think those are what we'd like to call NLTBEs, not likely to be earned. Because he hasn't hit those thresholds yet, so I would imagine they're related to playtime incentives and maybe some statistical stuff. Normally, the Steelers stay away from that kind of stuff, and obviously, anything that he would hit if it is tied to 2021, it would have to, if they're not likely to be earned, if he earns them, they would go on to 2022 cap number, and it'll be interesting to see if there's anything guaranteed in 2022 that that ties him to the team. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, we'll see what kind of bonus money he got, and it's not going to be a lot of bonus money, right? Because the Steelers just can't give a lot of bonus money right now. So, how much of 2022, if any, is fully guaranteed? I think that's going to be the single best way to kind of measure this thing. And if he did get a fully guaranteed amount, then I can understand why he did it. Now, the Steelers usually, if only do, future guaranteed money when it comes to the quarterback position, and he obviously plays the quarterback position, right? So
some cynics would argue otherwise.
Okay,
fair enough.
Look, what else are you going to do here to kind of, if you weren't going to draft a quarterback this year, if you're under the assumption that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be done after 2021, they don't know what they have in Dwayne Haskins yet. They're not going to know what they have in Dwayne Haskins until they get to training camp there. They probably got a pretty good idea of what they think that they know right now, but they don't know how much, probably to the next level they can take him. The whole conversation, the whole offseason has been, well, they don't have a quarterback under contract in 2022. Once again, I thought that maybe, depend, and once again, it all depend on the financials here. I tended to think that maybe Mason would have bet on himself a little bit stronger to see if he could get to free agency and see if he could capitalize in that way. Now, obviously, if the guaranteed money, if you can put a guaranteed, I don't even know. It's hard to even judge by Rappaport's numbers here what the fully guaranteed might be in this thing. But let's say it's just like $6 million. Okay. Well, then you could maybe understand why he did that. Hey, $6 million, that should do it if he doesn't play a single down past 2022 or 2021 even, right? So it'd be interesting to see the financials on that. It'll take about 3 or 4 days, but we'll get them.
I like this for two reasons, and I am not a big Mason Rudolph fan, and I still have some worry that they believe he's the franchise guy or the potential heir to the future, or heir to Ben of the future, I should say. But I like this move for two reasons. A, it gets you a quarterback under contract for next year, which he did not have, and so that at least gives you some options and makes you feel like you're not, boxed into a corner with all your quarterback contract expiring basically at the same time. So that's obviously important. And then two, and I would say more importantly, is hopefully, at least, I guess I can't guarantee it until we get out of the draft here on Saturday, but hopefully this takes the mid-round quarterback off the board. I don't think Rudolph was going to prevent them from the idea of trusting Fields had he fell. Obviously, he did not on Thursday, but hopefully this eliminates the second or fourth-round quarterback of the Kyle Trask or Jamie Newman or Mond or someone like that. I don't like the idea of taking the mid-round quarterback. I'm a go big or go home guy. Take him early or don't take him at all. So if Mason Rudolph can prevent this team from drafting a quarterback in the third, fourth round, then that alone makes the extension worth it. You know
how I felt about them possibly drafting a quarterback this offseason. So if this prevents this, and once again we'll see what the financials say on it. Obviously, it doesn't look like the financials are going to say Mason has to be the starting quarterback in 2022, right? You wouldn't think that the financials will say that. However, it's hard to envision right now Mason Rudolph not opening up the 2022 season as at least your starter. Now, there's obviously going to be the potential of the Steelers to really draft a quarterback high in 2022, especially if they don't address one during this year's draft. Which, man, let's hope that doesn't happen, Alex. I mean, at this point, with the Big Five off the board, if one falls in around 7 that you want to play with, have at it. I guess, but at this point, I'd much rather have a punter in round 7 than I would a quarterback that's probably going to end up on your practice squad.
Yeah, so we'll see. Again, I can't do my victory lap for that because maybe they still take a mid-round quarterback. I mean, the report is they have interest in like Kyle Trask. Then you'll just have the Spider-Man meme of Mason Rudolph and Kyle Trask pointing at each other if Trask is the pick here at 55 or 87. But let's hope the Rudolph extension prevents that.
What if for some reason here they were to take a guy like Trask in the second round? How would you? I mean, it's early. You can't grade the draft off of just 2 picks. But how would you grade the draft off of 2 picks if it was Najee and then? I mean, obviously it depends on who was on the board, who did they bypass. I'm sure, but I'm betting that at least, and probably not good to do that, but I'm betting that at least one of those 2 centers, Dickerson or Humphrey, would be on the board at 55. If they went Trask at 55, how would you grade the 2-round draft?
It would be like me in a 100-meter dash, and I get in my sprinter stance and I fire out, and I'm off to this great start, and then about 5 steps in, I immediately just trip over myself and fall flat on my face. I mean, it would be like that, where you're just like, great start. What the heck happened after that? So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I guess it could happen, but I think it'd be a really poor choice of the Steelers. And I don't hate Trask. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback, but I would hate the pick at 55 if it was Kyle Trask.
Once again, I think each pick needs to be obviously judged and graded, and really the totality of the draft overall needs to be graded and all. But how tied to 55 do you really believe 24 is when it comes to grade? I really feel like it can really, you get this piece of art, and sometimes, not that I'm a huge art critic now, I'm not that cultured. People know that by now. You should know that. But you get something, and something else accents it and sets it off. You know what I'm coming from? That aspect of it. And I know generally I don't look at drafts this way, but I have this feeling that I can't get rid of. I'm trying to be open and honest, that the selection of Najee Harris at 24 really can be made to look a lot better depending on what you do at 55. Is it wrong for me to look at it that way?
No, it's not. Because again, I think the calculation for Pittsburgh was that we're going to get our offensive linemen today on Friday, maybe even 2 of them, maybe at 55 and 87. But I think that was the calculation, and it was not the idea of we're happy with our offensive line, we're not going to draft offensive linemen. It was just the reality of, if we don't get the running back at 24, we're not going to find that caliber guy at 55, and we can still find a really good offensive lineman at 55.
I'll sum it up this way, my feelings about Najee. Obviously not I'm fungible Dave for a reason when it comes to that. But at least they did one of the things that, if they're going to break the rule, they got a guy that could be a 3-down back, a guy that doesn't have to come off the field, a guy that you should be able to expect to play at least 700, if not more snaps for you. They're a guy that should help out in short yards, a guy that can catch the ball out of, you've got at least a 3-down back and one that can stay on the field. So if you're going to break the fungibility rule of a first round running back, I guess he was the one to break it with.
And I'm so glad it wasn't ETN. I did not want them to draft Travis Etienne. I would not been happy with that. Yeah, just to wrap a bow on the thought I just mentioned, the drop-off between the running backs in round 1 and round 2 was greater than the drop-off between the offensive linemen in round 1 and round 2. And so that's why I think they ultimately went running back.
One thing, not having not a big deal at this point, but down the road, not having the measurables to use in future, what would they look for? Studies. We'll never know what his 40 or 3-cone time is. That kind of bothers me. Look, as long as he can. Go ahead.
The number one thing they look for, though, is size. Athletically, they don't really care about what you test. I mean, they've not drafted exactly sparky running backs over the years, and so they want size. And Harris is the biggest back in this draft, and that kind of is very much in line with what they look for.
Okay. All right. Tell us some other names to look for in day 2, Mr. Kozora.
muted myself. Have the article up on Steelers Depot. Draft options for day 2 kind of lets them in no particular order. Obviously, today I think is heavy on the offensive line, whether that's a Dickerson or a Miners or some of these offensive linemen, these tackles. Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan, Spencer Brown, Northern Iowa, Texas's Samuel Cosme, Notre Dame's Liam Eichenberg. If he makes it to 55, I don't know if he actually will fall that far. And then probably the big one to talk about, the guys that kind of feel like Steelers. It's Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. I know we've had a lot of discussions about his value and where we value him. Is he a second-round guy, a third-round guy, et cetera. But I think Freiermuth is certainly someone very much on this team's radar. And if he's there at 55, it's going to be very tempting for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Man, I gotta admit, if they go, they gotta go get a center, Alex. I'm gonna have some heartburn if they go Freiermuth here.
Well, okay. Just ask you a quick sidebar. Let's assume that Humphrey and Dickerson are gone. Maybe they're there. Who knows? But if they aren't, then where are you going? Is it Miners? Is it Myers? Do you have a preference?
I mean, then you get into what's the probability factor of Miners or Myers falling, being on the board with your with your third round pick, right?
I don't think you can do that because you're really taking a risk there. Because if those guys aren't there, then you're in a difficult spot,
right? Because it really fans out, right? I mean, it's already after the first 20 picks of any NFL draft, it really starts fanning out, right? Where, obviously a lot harder to pinpoint there. Look, once again, I've done a lot of work on Pat Freiermuth. I'm not thrilled with him as a 55 option. I would be even less thrilled with him at 55 on the heels of getting a running back in the first round. Does that make sense?
It does. I wouldn't.
You're higher on Freiermuth than I am, aren't you? Right.
Yes, I am. Yeah. So I would be. I'd be more open to it than I think you would be at 55.
Okay. I mean, look. If anything, he would help in the running game department. But
yeah, I mean, his blocking is average right now. It can get better. I would call it average right now.
He's obviously on the board. They like him. They like him. Depending on Dickerson's medical, something we've talked about extensively, that will be a big difference of A, even if he drops to 55, and B, if he drops to 55, if he's still on the Steelers board. We don't know. Quinn Miners, obviously, we've talked about him quite a bit. A guard, sat out 2020. Showed at the Senior Bowl that center's not too big with him. Showed at the Senior Bowl that he can play with a bigger competition there. Why do you have Anthony Schwartz there in second, third round? I mean, do you think he's way up there? You think that's where his value is, second, third round?
I think that's where the league could value him. And there was a tweet from, who was it, Schefter? I forget who it was. It had Schwartz on the list of guys who would go earlier than what some people think. Now, I don't want them to take Anthony Schwartz. When you run 4.27, those guys don't always drop in the day number 3 when you're running that kind of time.
Oh, Lord, call 911, Alex, if they make him to pick. All right, just don't even check on me. Just pick up the phone and call 911 if he's a day 2 pick for the Steelers. Same with Kyle Trask. Same with Jalen Mayfield. I think personally, I don't want to see that. Baron Browning, something that I don't necessarily maybe see at 55, but I could really see in the third round, as is the case with Derek Barnes. Ronnie Perkins, I think, is in that third round category, as is Sean Wade, as is Robert Rochelle, who you have on the list. Is there anybody else though there at obviously I think you listed these all guys as day 2 guys, but who, give me 5 names the Steelers most likely to draft at 55? And you didn't have Creed on here, right? Are you expecting Creed to be gone or what?
I am. Yes, I am expecting Humphrey to be gone.
Okay.
And now, if he's there, then I'm running the card up and with his name on it, and the whole pro day thing becomes less of an obstacle. It doesn't matter as much in the second round as it does in the first round. So the fact that Tomlin and Colbert weren't there doesn't really matter.
Give me 5 names you think plausible for 55.
I'm not going to put this in a particular order here, but you get the sense of where I'm going. Freiermuth, Dickerson, those are the top 2 that come to mind. And then I would put Miners as well, kind of put those top centers in there. And then a tackle, whoever the best tackle is still there. And I don't know if that's a Cosme, a Mayfield, a Brown, Radens even. I mean, you could put, your favorite tackle there. And then the 5th spot, I'm not even sure what the 5th spot would be. Pick your defensive player.
No chance Asante Samuel Jr. falls down there, right?
Saying no chance is dicey in the draft, but I think he's probably going to be gone before then. That's why I did not have him on the list.
All right.
Any names that you would add to that 5 that I did not?
I think it's plausible that Humphrey's there.
Okay, yeah, if he's there, is the top center going to go 55 overall? It generally doesn't happen.
Okay. All right.
So, any other names?
None that I would like to see Steelers at this point. Really, I think it's somewhere in there. I'm not. Is Miners a 55 guy?
Yes.
Let's be honest. Is he a 55 guy?
I mean, do you want to wait to 87 and find out if he falls to you?
Well, if Dickerson's medicals were clear, I wouldn't have wanted to let him bypass 24. To be honest with you.
Sure. But I think from a tape standpoint, Miners was pick at 55. I wouldn't bat an eye at it. If he was a second round guy to any team, I wouldn't bat an eye at it.
All right,
he could be there at 87. I mean, I think it's possible, but I think 55 is possible as well.
All right. People probably want to listen to this before a draft, so it probably shouldn't be 4 hours long, huh?
Yeah, well, I think we're about wrapping up. Any other final thoughts? Any other day one thoughts? The quarterbacks go. Justin Fields going. That was the question. Would Fields drop? Where would he go? Chicago moves up from, 20 to 11 to take him. First round, though, not a lot of surprises. Not anything that was, like, whoa, like Cleve Farrell at 4. Nothing like that. Trey Lance, the guy at 3 for the 49ers. That was, that first pick where you didn't know what direction it was going to go, and a good pick there for San Francisco.
I did get 7 for 7 on my first
nice.
on my first round prediction that I do annually. I'm trying to remember if I've done that, how many times I've done that in the past there. Not a lot of huge surprise. I guess one of the biggest surprises, and I don't know once again, once you get out of the top 20 picks, how you'd go about saying, well, this was a surprise or this is a surprise, because we've seen it fan out, so many times from there. Just Travis Etienne, going to Jacksonville. I found that a surprise. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. It certainly was probably one of the least popular picks, I would say, in the first round. Alex Leatherwood going to 17 to the Raiders. The Raiders always do surprise there, but I actually like that pick for Las Vegas.
Yeah, I thought a little bit high. I wasn't floored that. Oh my God, once again, I think just looking at really more of a surprise. I mean, a lot of these guys, once again, you go by Gil Brandt's top 100 every year. And even if you look at Gil Brandt's top 32, most of those guys in that top 32, now obviously the order kind of, might be messed up, but a good 24, 25 of them usually go in those top 32 picks there. So I think once you get outside, the guys that end up maybe are outside of Gil Brandt's top 40 that go in the top 32 are the guys that you kind of deem a surprise.
All right, good call for you. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah did not go in the top 32. I thought Washington could be in play, but they go Davis out of Kentucky, so good call on JOK.
Yeah, I thought he might get pushed down there. I'm not all that shocked about Jenkins either, man, to be quite honest with you.
No?
Of him falling out. Now, a lot of these guys are going to come off the board here pretty soon. You want to tackle a few emails real quick?
Yeah, we should do that. Let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, Jelani writes in, hey, Dave and Ox, with it looking like offensive line, whether it's tackle or center being a second or third round pick, if they were to go defense in either round, which position should take priority? Would it be edge depth, blah, 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 Watt Highsmith, or slot corner? I personally like to see an edge address. Plain and simple, if they're going to draft a defensive player with one, let's say they stay put with everything that they have, and they only make their two scheduled picks on day two, and if one of them's defense, I mean, it could go inside linebacker, it could go outside linebacker, it could go cornerback. I would think that's it. That's the list.
Yeah, I would prefer them to go corner or edge, depending on the board and the value, but that's where my head is at now. Again, it could be off-ball linebacker too, with Derek Barnes or Baron Browning, but corner or edge to me are the top two areas to address.
Okay, let me drill this down a little bit here, sort it. Chuck Griffin, what was your biggest surprise in the first round? For me, people forgetting that the Denver Broncos need an elite cornerback to face the Chiefs and Chargers twice a year. I mean, I suppose you could probably, to me, it was Travis Etienne to the Jaguars, I think.
Yeah, I would say that's up there. Speaking of which, Steelers better make sure they have some good corners. I mean, they got a pretty tough receiver group there. The Bengals draft Jamar Chase, and the Browns with their studs, and the Ravens adding Bateman. You better be pretty good in the secondary to cover those guys in the North. Yeah,
absolutely. LM writes in, if we get through tonight without taking a running back, wait, can you die? No, I think outdated. That's a little bit older there. Michael Moore, Alex shared on Twitter that Colbert had a list of 8 names. I know you guys have basically covered over the past few months, but want to know what the exact number, what's your best guys at who the best guess at who the other 7. I think we already went over that, didn't we? Kind of estimating who the other 7 guys might have been, and we don't technically know whether or not those 7 other guys were how many other, if that meant guys still on the board. Or what,
Yeah, I interpreted it as guys that could have been taken too, but just the 8. They had 8 guys that said if they're there at 24, we're not moving out.
Let's see. Who else do we have here? Bryce. I have no problems with Najee in the first round. I figured that it was ultimately going to be the pick, and I would say not so fast on the idea he'll burn out after 5 years. Najee seems to like he has mental toughness and character to possibly last longer than that with the Steelers. I guess we'll see. I did a PFF mock for the rest of our picks and included in this email, and love to get your thoughts. Yeah, he has Dickerson at 55, Brady Christensen, tackle out of BYU at 87. Kelvin Joseph, a cornerback out of Kentucky at 128. Tommy Tremble at 140. The he's not going to be there crowd's going to come after you, Bryce. Those guys like coming after people there for not going to be there. He's got Damar Hamlin, the safety out of Pitt, at 216. Isaiah McDuffie, linebacker out of Boston College. I haven't watched any tape on him, I don't believe, at 245. And he's got Tyron Jackson, the edge out of Coastal Carolina. I think you and I mentioned for briefly in a couple of the podcasts at 254. Look, Landon Dickerson at 55 at the medical's clear. Obviously, I'm on board with that. Brady Christensen, you watch much on Brady Christensen, the tackle out of BYU?
Yeah, man, if you get Dickerson and Christensen, you got some big dancing bears up front. Now, Christensen could move to guard potentially, really athletic, could fit well in a zone scheme. The Steelers are going to play, more of the inside zone, outside zone type of stuff. BYU is primarily a zone blocking team. I don't think he's going to fall that far, not to focus on that too much, but Dickerson and Christensen and Najee Harris, man, your run game's going to turn around real quick.
And he's got Tommy Tremble on here now.
Yeah.
At 140 there. Kelvin Joseph, I don't know too terribly about him. I suppose I would probably swap Tremble at 128 and Joseph at 140 just to maybe try to appease the he's not going to be there crowd. Hamlin, meh. I mean, Isaiah McDuffie, I haven't watched it. I don't think I've watched anything on him. And Tyron Jackson, Alex and I had talked a time or two about as a late round edge possibility there.
Yeah, just you have in this scenario, you better just pray and sacrifice a goat that Highsmith and Watt stay healthy, as your edge depth is a 7th round pick in Jackson and Cassius Marsh.
Dear David Otts from John in Fort Myers, Florida, I want to thank the two of you and all the members of the Steelers Depot team for your tireless and inspiring work. Your podcasts are the best, and your content and insights are unmatched, and I love the minutia. While Najee Harris seems to be solid, running backs are fungible. Draft total line. This was obviously 2 days ago, but I don't think we got to it the other day. John, thanks for the email, and hopefully Fungible Days becomes fun-loving, fun-loving.
Just fun.
Yeah, just fun, Dave. Right? When it comes, look, I think I've made my opinions pretty clear on that. And once again, if they get one of these top two centers, assuming Dickerson's medicals pass, yada yada, if they come out of the second round with Creed Humphrey or Landon Dickerson, then does the order really matter?
Yeah, it looks a whole lot better. I think you need to evaluate the plan for the run game based off the end of today and what they do in rounds 2 and 3, and have that clearer, fuller picture. I think is important than just running back at 24 if you're in that anti-running back crowd.
All right, good job, Alex. I hope you guys and girls listening to this show aren't busy today because we got a lot of content coming at you. Go ahead and cancel all your meetings for the first couple weeks of May as well too, because we're going to be keeping you listeners and readers very busy as well. Good job, Alex. I can't wait till we will be back tomorrow morning, right? On the podcast. We're going to have a lot of podcasts here recapping some of this stuff as well too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Make sure you follow all the guys, all of our draft profile guys and all like that. We'll try to tweet out their handles as well too, and Dr. Mel and David O and really all the great contributors that we have here. Make sure you follow those guys and supporting them on Twitter as well too, because they really did do a fantastic job during the pre-draft process here. So Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora, the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site as well. And until the morning, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.